Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and I would officially like to call this meeting of the November meeting of the Indiana Commission for Higher Education to order and ask our secretary, Mr. Lamoth, to please do the agenda for us, or the roll call, please.
Okay, so I have Jerry Babco, Dennis Bland. Present. John Conant. Present. John Costas. Present. Susana Duarte de Suarez is on the line. Judd Fisher. Here. Lisa Hirschman. Here. Al Hubbard. Chris Lamoth is here. Mika Mosier. Chris Murphy. Chris was here. Okay, Chris Murphy had to leave. Dan Peterson is here. Here. Karen Whitehouse is here. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Bennett, President Linda Bennett, to come up and say a few words. And again, thank you so much for hosting us.
Well, I can tell you it's been a genuine pleasure the last day to have members of the Commission and the Commission staff on our campus. You've had a number of presentations, and so I'll keep this very brief. I have to say, I've been at the university for 14 years, and so I've been coming to commission meetings for a while now. But I really want to congratulate this commission and the leadership of Commissioner Lubbers, because the spirit here is so good. It's one of the reasons why the state of Indiana, I think, is probably one of the best states in the union to be in the industry of higher education, because the spirit is so good about our common mission, our shared goals. So I thank all of you. I know you're all volunteers to do this important work, and I can tell you it's incredibly appreciated. And the University of Southern Indiana appreciates your support, and very glad to have you on campus during this past day. Enjoy the rest of the day and have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again for your hospitality and for your passionate comments on a couple of occasions throughout our visit, and for hosting last evening as well as all of your staff and leadership. Very impressed by everyone we've talked to, and again, really appreciate having us on campus. So thank you so much. So I just a couple of comments from the chair's seat, if you will, and I didn't tell Teresa this first comment, so I hope she bears in mind the spirit with which it's said. I just feel like, given the what's happened recently, I just need to address the big elephant in the room. I mean, it's just been such an amazing period of time for our country, and historic. I think of the adjectives that come to mind: historic, challenging, remarkable. Just I never thought I'd see it in my life, and I just think we need to talk about it. I mean, what do you think? The Cubs win the World Series, right? I mean, that's what you were thinking, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where you were going. So, no.
So as a Cleveland Indian fan, I take offense.
Well, I know this group is a nonpartisan group, so, and we're not supposed to take sides, but chair's prerogative on this one. We had 108 years to wait. You've only had 68 or whatever it is.
I went to high school right down the street from Beaconsfield, and I won't tell you that this is my next work. I had to spend to get tickets to the World Series game in attendance.
Oh my. Congratulations, then. You appreciate it more than anyone, right? That's awesome. So, in all seriousness, and now that I think people are breathing a little sigh of relief that I didn't go a different direction with my comments, I did want to share a couple of other thoughts. One, just want to point out and make sure everybody references the fact that we are December 1st and 2nd in Indianapolis. We will be hosting the 2016 Student Advocate Conference. which will take place again in Indianapolis. Registration is available on the Commission's website and will be available and open until November 23rd. So that's exciting. I also wanted to point out, which you'll see in the agenda, today's agenda, that we're going to talk more about the You Can Go Back program and focusing on students that have some level of education beyond high school and the encouragement for them to go back and complete their degrees of whatever sort makes the most sense. I just want to point out how important, not at the exclusion of all the other great work that our universities are doing and the Commission's doing, but it's such an important program, I think, for so many reasons, and I just want to kind of drum additional attention to it, and coming as a large employer who has embarked on efforts in parallel with that program in what we're doing at Cook to try and get our employees exposed to make it easy for them to go back to school and continue their education. It's been, it's such a win-win. It's just been remarkable to see the response level of our folks, and so I encourage employers and other partners throughout the state to jump on this and help make it as easy as possible and as collaborative as possible for them to continue their education. So more about that in the future, but I did want to just make a couple of quick comments about that. And so with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Lubbers for her Commissioner's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by pointing out that you have 3 sheets in front of you that were provided about the reorganization of Ivy Tech. First, I should actually begin by acknowledging that one of our own has taken on a new job, and Mary Jane Michalak is in the audience. She is now responsible for government relations at Ivy Tech. I think always good to know that you're going to be in the audience with us again. And she provided this to me, and as you probably have been following, both through the implementation of Senate Bill 301, the selection of President Ellsberman to lead the team, and throughout the process that we've been putting together our budget recommendations, that there is a lot happening at Ivy Tech Community College. I'm not sure I understand all of the dotted lines and straight lines, but we're giving this to you so that you can have a better understanding. It's complemented by a letter from Steve Tincher, who's with us here today, who's the academic provost, and signed also by Chris Lowry, who is now the head of workforce alignment for Ivy Tech. You will recall that much of that has been called the corporate college, and the corporate college doesn't exist in that with that terminology anymore. It is now workforce alignment, and the organizational charts you have explain that. More later, but because there's so much happening so fast, they wanted to make sure that you had a chance to see this, and we will continue to talk about that going forward. You didn't really mention the election season, but I will only by saying that the fact that the election season has not kept us from proceeding with a lot of work in the weeks leading up to the election as we've continued to get ready for the upcoming legislative session. You'll be voting today on budget recommendations and just the continuation of the implementation of our strategic plan. So we've been very busy. A couple data point updates that I provided last month, but I'm just continuing to give you this information, and the chairman already alluded to one, which is the You Can Go Back campaign. We have lots of ways to measure the success of this and the potential success, which is really when we get those students to come back and complete. We're going to talk about that today a little bit more, but one metric has been the number of people who have come in to apply for the adult student grant. And I gave you some of those numbers last month. Compared to last year when we had around 6,000 who had applied for that grant, we're now at close to 22,000 adults who have applied for that grant. So I think it's an indication of the fact that people are hearing and they're really seriously considering continuing their education. Another important data point is the continuation of the numbers that we're seeing of people who fill out their FAFSA. As you will recall, they changed this so that you now use your prior tax returns, and we can do this earlier with it opening up on October 1st. We've had close to 40,000 people who have completed that since October 1st. So, you don't know at this point whether this means you're actually going to have more, they're just coming in sooner, but I think it's a good sign that people appreciate the fact that they have greater clarity earlier on how much money they might be able to receive in financial aid. Another issue that we've talked about in the past but continues to dominate some of the discussions is how we continue to be engaged with the students who were at ITT when ITT closed. And in particular, today, I just wanted to tell you that Congressman Messer has been very interested in this and has been successful in getting the U.S. Department of Education to restore Pell benefits to students who were actually at ITT at the time that it closed, or even 120 days before. He's continuing to also work on the issue of restoring GI benefits. It's timely, since we've spent a lot of time today talking about veterans, to make sure that at the same time that Pell benefits are restored, that those people who use their GI benefits have those restored as well. So we'll keep you posted on that going forward. Another update is on our Next Generation Teacher Scholarship Program. You will recall that the legislature passed this program. We've given you lots of updates on this. We've had really very strong response to this program. 135,000 hits on people have viewed it on YouTube. The little blip that we did, the video, which has been very strongly received, and then and I never know what this means, but the Facebook and Instagram ads have been exposed 1.6 million to 1.6 million people. I think that's true. But we think it's, at the very least, we know that people are very interested. The application for that was made available on November 1st, and the applications the application season is over on December 31st. Last week, I had a chance to participate in a news conference with Speaker Bosma and President Elsner of Marian University, in which they announced that they would, for 25 recipients, if they selected Marian, would wrap around the full cost. So in addition to what the state is paying, they would pay the full cost for them to come to Marian under this New Generation Teacher Scholarship. Finally, and I know that Susanna was there as well, I had the opportunity to keynote the Indiana Latino Institute's Education Summit yesterday. It was called Excelling Access to Higher Education, Recruit, Retain, and Complete. Like we heard from the folks here at USI about how much they're doing is complementary to our strategic plan. Much of what the Indiana Latino Institute is doing in the area of education aligns with the work that we're doing as well. I was able to share with the group data that was encouraging, but that also made a case for a greater sense of urgency of how we're addressing the needs of Latino students in the state. Hispanic students are showing the most rapid increase in students entering college from high school of all racial groups, but keep in mind that that's 54%, and that number is 11% below the population at large. So on almost all the metrics that we follow, you're seeing a greater improvement with the Latino population, but it's coming from so much farther behind. But I was encouraged by ILI's commitment to really the principles that mirror ours in our partnership with them, and we'll look forward to ways to working with them going forward. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lubbers. Next up, we need to approve the minutes from the October 13th, 2016 Commission meeting. The minutes are in your book. I would entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
And a second. Okay, any discussion or comments related to the minutes? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. All right, thank you very much. They're adopted. We're going to do our public square session next, which is again on supporting returning adults. We're going to, since Indiana's, as we've talked here, both of us have mentioned a couple times here, since Indiana's Adult Reengagement Campaign, You Can Go Back, launched in February, the Commission's been collaborating with business and community partners to ensure that Hoosier adults who have some college but no degree are encouraged to go back and finish what they started. The discussion today will focus on how employers and community organizations are supporting adult students and how we accomplish converting stop-out adults back into students. Today, we'll hear from three folks: Brandon Bustede, Executive Director of Education and Workforce Development with Gallup; Robert Johnson, who is the Executive Director, Education Matters, Southern Indiana; and Chris Hargett, Senior Director, Training at the Heartland Payment Systems. I will turn the conversation over to Commissioner Lubbers and apologize to the three guests if I butchered your names.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We thought this was a very important time to talk about what we can actually do to take this groundswell of support for the program and this compelling need to actually get students who had some college but no degree to come back, adults to come back and complete. We're delighted that 3 people today who are joining us, and we think they each have a very important case to be made for the importance of this program through the lens of economic development and community development and what matters with education leaders. And especially looking at employers. We were very focused on making sure that at this point we partner with our employer community so that they are encouraging their employees to come back. You know, I've said this several times, you know, for years people would say if you encourage people to go back to school, they might leave us, and you might hear that from an employer. You just don't hear that anymore. What we hear now is if we don't train them, if we don't educate them, we cannot, in fact, continue to produce the quality product that we need in the state of Indiana. So we're delighted to have here, but we're going to really start with Brandon. And Brandon's not a stranger to us. He has been with us before. He spoke to one of our Weldon conferences a couple years ago. He championed the Gallup Purdue Index a couple years ago, really looking at what are those elements of your education that mattered to you as an adult? What did you benefit from your college experience, and how do we increase that? Everything from, you know, how do we decrease debt to get more people to have internships to making sure they have more engagement with faculty. And when we looked at this program, you know, I talked to Brandon, and he's in the process, and I think this is early in the stages for Gallup, of actually surveying and talking to people who have dropped out, why they've dropped out. Are we coming up, do we know the right reasons why people don't finish? We know some of them, but do we know them in the right proportionality? Do we think it's all about money when it may be about personal situations? And what do we do to address those obstacles? Because what we really know is, in spite of the success we've seen with this program so far, what really matters is, do we get them to come back and finish their degree or their credential? And so he said that they had some information that they've begun to collect. I don't even know how public it's been at this point, but I asked if he could spend some time with us to share some of what Gallup has learned, and then from that we'll continue to talk to our other 2 panelists as well. So with that, Brandon, we're going to turn to you first and ask if you could share with us some of the early results from the study that you've done on Stop Out adults, and what are the key findings that might be important for us to consider or know as we continue to implement the You Can Go Back campaign here in Indiana.
Yes, well, thank you, Commissioner, and it's a pleasure to be able to join all of you. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. We tried to sort that out, but next time, promise we'll be in person. But first of all, I just want to say a quick congratulations. There's been a lot of positive buzz, I know, not just in Indiana, but I've received calls from several other states since Indiana released its college value scorecard. And I know Gallup played a small part of that as part of the overall initiative, but I've already received calls from education officials in 5 other states asking about Indiana. I told them all to call Indiana, so hopefully you guys are hearing some of this too. But congratulations on what has already been seen in just a few weeks since you've really launched that. An incredible leadership initiative. So, and thanks for letting us be part of that. I hope it's been a productive and great set of feedback that you're hearing there in the state as well. And as Commissioner mentioned, you know, we've actually got a whole bunch back to Indiana. We launched the Gallup Purdue Index, the largest representative study of college graduates in U.S. history, with Purdue and Governor Daniels. We also, interestingly, if you haven't heard about this, about 4 months ago, we are now conducting officially a daily interview of 350 U.S. adults every single day on questions about higher education. We've already interviewed 50,000 people. This is a huge collaboration between USA Funds, another Indiana-based entity, as you know, and Gallup. And so there is going to be an incredible amount of insights coming from that. Because what we're able to get at in that process are the 36 million Americans who have some college and no degree. And interestingly enough, it's a population that we know very little about. So let me segue to what the commissioner has asked me to speak briefly about, and that is some of the early research we've been doing on those individuals who have some college and no degree. And so one of the first things that's interesting to note is that, as I kind of alluded to, there isn't a ton of research that has gone into great depth around what were the circumstances, first of all, that led them to drop out in the first place, and then getting a much more nuanced understanding of the various ways in which they could get back on that path. And so as we've gone in depth on this, one of the first things we realized was that the big insights we were gathering were not necessarily coming from simple web-based surveys with fixed response choices, which of course is how we've tried to do much of this research. That live qualitative interviewing, which we conducted on the phone, actually got into great depth and nuance in ways that we've never been able to understand. So let me give you a few examples. As I've had conversations with colleagues, frustrated me and disappointed me is that I've asked them all a question about what are the top reasons why people don't return who no longer enroll there, right, who drop out of their institution. And unfortunately, I haven't had a college president yet who's given me a good answer on that question. First of all, they'll say something really honest like, well, we think we know, but we haven't really looked at that very, very well, right? And then they'll throw out some generalities like most of us will do. They'll say, well, I'm sure a lot of it was financial reasons or whatever, but the truth of the matter is none of them have conducted any kind of rigorous follow-up with the people who are not re-enrolling in their institution. And that's one big, kind of huge insight that we have about higher education is that we spend all this time and money on access. We spend all this time and money at an institutional level on things like admissions and marketing and recruiting, and we do almost nothing for the people who don't re-enroll, right? It's actually uncommon that an institution would even try and survey those individuals. So, and of course, one of the other insights we've learned is that one of the last things that somebody who dropped out of an institution wants to do is respond to a web survey from the institution they just left. So there's been an interesting opportunity for an organization like Gallup to try and shed insight on this. And so here's what we've learned. Some of these things may not sound surprising, but they'll get increasingly more surprising, I think. One, it's not as simple as saying financial reasons, right? So if you think about that as a survey response and people go, yeah, it was financial issue or it was cost or whatever, those are things that are certainly a big element of what's happening in this process, but it's more about life elements intervening in these people's lives. It's not about them dropping out. So I'll give you examples. Things underneath the hood of financial reasons were expressions like, my father got sick and became terminally ill, and I had to go home to take care of him. And 2 years later, he passed away, and, I just, that was it, right? So my mom lost her job. And I was the only one that, could be a breadwinner for the family. So I went home and got a job. I got pregnant, right, and decided that I couldn't continue my educational programs. There's all kinds of elements in this. By the way, if you're thinking about other populations like those who are enrolled in the military, one of the biggest drivers for them is that they moved. They got reassigned somewhere. And so they started in a program. They were there at a particular base for 2 years, and they got transferred somewhere else, and so had to discontinue or recontinue their studies elsewhere. So it's more than meets the eye on some of the initial reasons that we've learned. And I think one of the things that was surprising to us, and this may not sound surprising after I say it, but it's not on people's list right now of what they think of as drivers for why people don't re-enroll. But when we studied the experiences of dropouts, right, the likelihood that they had high-quality educational experiences as part of their time on campus compared to those who graduated, I'll just tell you what the story is, that if you think about it from a customer experience perspective, and I know higher ed doesn't like to use the terminology customer experience, but let's just use that as an example. These are folks who had a really crummy customer experience. And when you think about that, it starts to make a lot of sense. They are people who did not make connections with professors. They are people who did not get into any meaningful courses that got them excited about their learning or showed them the relevance of what they were learning or helped them connect to an internship or a co-op where they were able to apply what they were learning. So they weren't getting any of the relationship support benefits of college. They weren't getting any of the relevance from the perspective of their coursework to their jobs or future careers or lives perspective. And so in summary, in the data, they had a lousy customer experience, a lousy student experience. And so as troubles arise, right, like you have financial hardship in your family or you second guess the commitment you're making to this and all those things go in your head and you go, yeah, and truth be told, it really hasn't been a great experience. So it's one of the elements that contributes to their feelings that it might not be worth it. So I just wanted to kind of paint, some high-level findings from this research. But what I will say is that there's a big difference in what we were able to learn from doing a web-based survey, which is an effective way to do research in a lot of different respects. But for this particular issue of really trying to get under the hood and understanding the nuances of what's gone on in these people's lives, the interesting thing that gives us great hope about this is that these are all people who, the vast majority, talked about their strong desire to they had a bad experience, life intervened, things kind of got into a different path and trajectory for them, but a lot of them still have a real desire to continue at some point. And so we've got still a high appetite to potentially re-engage them if we can re-engage them in the right ways. So I hope those are just helpful overview, Commissioner. And one of the things that we talked about was the idea that virtually no institution, and this certainly isn't happening at a state level, is really making a concerted effort to try to contact each of the individuals who don't re-enroll at an institution. And so one idea we have is the notion of potentially setting up an interviewing procedure where an organization like Gallup could call on the phone students who do not re-enroll. So obviously this happens at a semester basis, right? So at the beginning of each semester, every institution knows the students who didn't re-enroll. Those could be people who are contacted by a third-party organization and conduct a brief interview to ask them some of these important questions. That's also an opportunity, of course, to begin their re-engagement of saying, okay, I understand the problem. Is there anything we can do to help get you back on that path? What are the things we could do to help keep you connected in the time between now and when you might, consider re-enrolling? Is there a different type of path or institution that might be part of this, right? So this could be an opportunity where a dropout from one institution might be a better fit at another institution, right? It might have been a program level analysis, but if you think about doing this at a state level, you can start to give people opportunities across the state, not just thinking about coming back to that institution, but thinking about institutional fits, right, that exist across the state or within their city or region. And so the simple idea that we started discussing was the notion of a third-party phone interview process for those who drop out as a regular data collection process that, of course, would provide some quantitative analysis and also some important qualitative insights on how we can, first of all, avoid these folks dropping out if there are avoidable situations, and also get them back on the path as soon as possible to re-enrolling, depending on what their situation is. So I'll just stop there, Commissioner, and see if there's any quick questions or comments, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you today.
Thank you, Brandon, and thanks for your early comments about the Indiana College Value Index and your help putting that together with us. So we were very helpful, and we're very encouraged about continuing that work. And I will take anybody or any members of the commission who would like to ask questions, but I'll start off with one. As I listened to your early findings from your contact with people who have dropped out, it seems to me that there are some things that we could look at that we have within the power of institutions to impact, and some that are really tough. I mean, some of the reasons that you gave, that people saying, father getting sick, I got pregnant, mom lost her job, those kinds of things are really tough to figure out how do we address those needs. And then when I heard what you were saying about, some not having a high-quality experience, I was thinking, at that same institution, some of the alums that you have been surveying would say that they obviously did, and some didn't. So it does lead us to sort of, we can't generalize about this population because it's such a unique story with everyone, but it leads me to want to think that, and part of why I wanted you to get us thinking about this is, if in fact we are thinking about this in the wrong way, or that we have not actually addressed the issues that would allow them to either have stayed and not dropped out, which would be one option in this whole thing, or what would be different when they come back? And that's the question, I guess, that I think should drive some of our discussion. What would be different if they came back, or what has to be different for them to come back? And I guess I just wanted you to sort of see if you have any response to that sort of stream of consciousness question.
Yes, well, so you're right. Some of these things are pretty big issues to address, right? And you go, well, what could the institution do to address some of those major life interventions, right, as I kind of described them? And, look, in some cases, there are events and people are making the right decision relative to the choices they have in front of them. But I tell you, when we ask them about the things that could have been helpful to them, or the things that would be helpful to them to get back, a couple interesting things. One, it was a lot about flexibility. So when you think about adult learners today, right, and some of the most promising models in higher education, what have they given people the ability to do? One, for distance education models, to take some or all of their courses from home, right, a location that they can do that's easier to get to, right, so they don't have travel involved. They also can do it in off hours when they don't have to worry about childcare. So that was one of them, right, is that they would like more late night or weekend classes because they have challenge with childcare options. So, you can think about innovative models, right, for some people that might help subsidize a small portion of childcare coverage, right, so that they can take classes. Or thinking about late night classes or another class schedule. I mean, those are things that could be adjustable for a certain population, but flexibility was one of them. Even some folks saying, well, maybe I didn't have to drop out entirely. My initial thought was I was just going to leave for a semester, but after I'd been gone for 3 months, it just, seemed to, so in other words, if somebody had kind of keeping them on a little communication drip feed, even though they weren't enrolled, it would have potentially primed them into continuing to think about coming back sooner rather than later. And the other thing on financial issues, Commissioner, that was really interesting is a lot of people, when we asked them about the financial issues, and we asked them about, the kinds of dollars involved, this was an unbelievable one, that we actually learned in work that came out of Thurgood Marshall College Fund. They provide a lot of full scholarships for African-American students. And one of the things they were stunned by was that they were losing their full scholarship of college. And they couldn't figure it out. And so they interviewed these students who were on a full ride. And the issue was that they were the oldest in their family in many of these cases, and their families weren't making ends meet. And so even though they had college paid in full, they were still trying to send money home so that their siblings could actually eat food. And when we asked them how much money the difference was, it was $500 a month. So think about it. They're getting a full ride. They're trying to send $500 a month home so that their family can eat. And the $500 a month was the difference between keeping them in school and them dropping out. So some of these economic things are not as big as $30,000 a year, right? When we're talking about differences of $500 a year, it is a crying shame that somebody couldn't have figured out that that was a relatively small distance to try to bridge the gap on.
Have questions before we move on, because we have to have time. Brandon, are you going to be able to stay with us, or?
I'm happy to if you'd like me to. I just wasn't sure if you wanted me to, but I can certainly stay on mute and listen in to the remaining folks as well.
Well, we might circle back around, but if you have to go off, we'll understand as well. But if you could, that'd be great.
I'll hang in there, no problem.
Thank you, and thank you for the early information. And I know it's going to be an ongoing project for Gallup. I'd like to turn to Bob Johnson now, who is obviously with Education Matters Southern Indiana, And first, Bob, if you just explain a little bit about this 5-county initiative, and in particular, your focus on adults and how you might intersect with You Can Go Back.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a real honor to be invited here, Commissioner and Mr. Chairman and the Commission. First of all, let me just say that, again, my name is Robert Johnson, and I'm the Executive Director of Education Matters, Southern Indiana, but since I'm the only employee, I kind of get to call myself whatever I want to. So Executive Director sounded pretty good to me. But anyway, I want to begin just by saying how grateful I am to Brandon and his research, because I really do work on the anecdotal level. I'm personally engaged with every one of our adult students, and you'll understand why. But Education Matters is a collaborative initiative of these community foundations. Scott, the Community Foundation of Southern Indiana, which is Floyd and Clark, Washington County, and Harrison County, who really realized that we were sort of facing a critical situation in terms of employees. We needed to look at adults and getting adults back into school. And by the way, our leadership team also consists of Purdue University South and IUS, Ivy Tech, Warwick One, and one Southern Indiana Chamber of Commerce. Let's see, I can control this myself, right? So I just want to begin by showing you our homepage. And the reason I want to show you that is because we have really simplified our message. When I began this job in June, our homepage was already created and it had our mission statement and a lot of stuff. And I said, look, we just need to be able to say exactly what we do. So we help adults with some college and no degree, complete a degree, or certification. That's all we do, and a button that says Get Started. And once they push that button, they give us a little bit of information about themselves, and we immediately are notified, and we give them a phone call. We're getting right back in touch with them. And I very presumptuously describe ourselves sometimes to people who will understand that we're sort of the customer service arm of You Can Go Back. You Can Go Back, of course, is an absolutely brilliant statewide initiative, probably the best in the nation. And so whenever I have the opportunity to sort of attach our wagon to your star, I do. And so we're as a matter of fact, when somebody completes our form, it immediately takes them to a link that says, now, we recommend that you go to the You Can Go Back site and enroll there too, because we want them to have, obviously, as many resources as they can. This kind of gives you a snapshot of what I'm dealing with. We have 40,000 people in our 5-county area that have some college and no degree. Now, I'm only responsible for getting 10,000 back to college. It's only 10,000, but I hope to be able to impact far more. I think that it's important that I not put a ceiling on myself. And just to kind of illustrate that we are doing our best to identify not only who they are, but where they are. We've identified about 2,000, so about 20% of my goal, which then is about a quarter of the entire population of those who have some college, no degree. So this just represents those that we've identified so far. And then those that we are actually engaged with is in this map. Let me catch up here a little bit. So again, it's only me. So how are we going to sustain ourselves and scale? So we're looking at a lot of different ways. There truly are no good models of sustainability and scalability nationally, particularly when you have to be so engaged with each individual. And by the way, we have not only as our mission, a recruitment mission, a return and complete, but we also have as our mission, persist and complete. So once we get them back into college, we're not finished with them. We track them, hopefully, until they finish, and continue to provide them whatever services they need in order to complete. Now, I think one of the most valuable things that we have in our initiative is scholarships. And what we have are tiny scholarships. We have the kind of scholarships that help people get over a barrier that they're facing today. We can fix someone's car. We can pay for a fee so that they can get their transcripts. We can help pay for some books. We can, help them out. We can even pay their rent, if they're moving out, which is often happens. They're trying to make a decision. Do I pay my tuition or I pay my rent? And we feel as though, we know that if we don't serve them right now, it'll be 6 months before we have the opportunity again, and we've probably lost them by that time. So we're thinking, how do we scale this when we have to be so in touch? We're customer service. And so one of the ways to get ourselves known is something we call our ambassador program. Now, you can go back as an ambassador program who ambassadors are professionals, but ours are all volunteers. And so we identified volunteers in the community, and the volunteers can come from a couple of different places. They can just be people with whom we have some contact who can pass out cards for us and say, go to this site and let them know that you're there, and we can and someone will get in touch with you and help you. And then they have cards that say congratulations that they can send to the people that they are inspiring and helping through the process. We also partner with other social service entities and agencies, for example, the Action Council of Southern Indiana, where you find Head Start and you find a lot of energy programs and things like that. And we say, if we can sign on your entire staff as ambassadors, we'll be your ambassadors too. So when we do college fairs and things like that, we invite them to our activities, and we set up a table that says ambassador, and they can sit there and we help cross-promote. And quite frankly, more often than not, their clients are also our clients. So it makes a lot of sense. So that's how we sort of get the word out. We identify our clients and hopefully get them through the system. We have 2,000 people right now in our database. Most of them have not been contacted yet. And so the worst thing is for them to be there and nothing happen at all. So we're really looking at a way by which we could use a call center just to at least make that initial call and find out more about them and what their needs are and so forth. And then we get them to an institution. Or Work One has been terrific if they really have no career goals. They may have dropped out because they lost the connection between the value of their degree and their aspirations, or they want to go back to college, they just don't know what they want to do. So we get them to a career counselor immediately at Work One, and they've been very, very helpful then to help us get them on a pathway. But so we want to make sure that we have a call center, of course, that has the kind of culture that would understand our clients. And then in terms of sustainability, we are looking at, maybe not this year because I'm really focused on our core business, and that is identifying adults and getting them back to college. But we may look at a way by which we can provide direct services through coaching to our business and industry community. And so that might be a way by which we can sort of get off grants and start moving into providing services that we could be paid for. I'm just going to go through some really, really quick data for you. You'll see that most of our clients are female, making less than $24,000 a year. They are mostly looking for four-year degrees. And that, I have more, but I thought maybe that'd kind of give you sort of a snapshot of the kinds of clients that we're looking at. I want to finish with just 3 quick slides about an initiative that I am involved in and our program is involved in called Bridging the Talent Gap. So during the month of November, I'm going to be knocking on the door of at least 30 employers in southern Indiana who answered an initial survey, and we asked them really 3 questions. And one was, what do you expect the growth of your company to be, and your area, and then how difficult will it be And you can see that growth is generally very, very impressive. And then we asked them, where are you going to find the skilled labor? And 81% said they're going to have a difficult time finding people. And then the last question we asked them was, are you engaged with your higher education institutions to help you find the skilled labor or to create the skilled labor that you need? And quite frankly, not a lot of them are. So this is one of the reasons why Education Matters is interested in being a part of this project, is because clearly, if I can help our business community find more options for themselves and for their employees, then this is another, I think, very valuable service that we can provide. Whoops, went too far. I'll just close with this slide because, no one tells the story of what we're doing better than our clients do. And again, we work on an anecdotal level. We're very interested in how, people are feeling about their experience. Clearly, we have people who, I say, a bucket full of bus tokens is not going to get them there if they haven't made the connection. And so we try to help them make that connection.
I hope you all read this. It's worth reading. I think are there any questions before? We may want to ask questions for the two together as we conclude our presentation today. But I think that actually you made lots of references to your work with the employer community, and that's where we'd like to turn next, Chris, to have you share a little bit of information with us. Tell us first what Heartland does,
Sure.
and then why you would be interested in encouraging people to come back, or your employees, and finish, and what could be replicable about what you're doing in your business that other businesses could think about doing as well.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Commissioner, and the entire commission. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and share our story. So Heartland, we're based out of Jeffersonville, Indiana. That's where our service center is. I've been with the company for going on 17 years now, so wore just about every hat you can wear. So around 2010, our former CEO, which we were recently acquired by Global Payments, but our former CEO, Mr. Bob Carr, had an initiative and an idea that he wanted to start a college program, or a program for his employees that extended off of his Give Something Back charitable foundation, in which he started in Lockport, Illinois. So we all got together in Princeton, New Jersey, which is our corporate headquarters, and we left that meeting with the idea of what his mission and what he really wanted to do, which he wanted to expand his Give Something Back program to his employees. And what that birthed the idea of what we call Heartland University, okay? And Heartland University is, we ended up going with that name, of course, because of the company, but what it is, we provide an on-site free college education for all of the employees that want to take advantage of it. So what we did was we interviewed several colleges, and we ended up landing with Ivy Tech Community College. Flexibility was part of it, cost was part of it, and so on. So we partnered with Ivy Tech to provide this partnership at our facility. So the way we designed it was we wanted to go with a business degree, because that's, what we do is we provide payment processing for merchants across the U.S. So we have, a call center which provides customer service. We have accounting, we have leadership, management, and so on. So the business administration degree was where we landed, and Ivy Tech worked with us. We were able to customize the program a bit because some of the electives we were able to choose. They have a customer service course, of course, your accounting, your so, and your gen eds, and so on. So what that did was we put this program together, we started with 20 or so students in our program on site. and we built what's called a cohort model. So we started with 2 cohorts, so we broke those 20 students up into two different cohorts and 2 different paths. Ivy Tech came on site. What they did was they did all the facilitation of, your application process, your FAFSA, any testing, the Compass test at that particular point. Now it's Accuplacer. So that whole process was delivered by Ivy Tech on site. So we got our group tested, we got them all ready to go, and I'm happy to say at this particular point, as of the after the completion of the fall, we'll have 34 graduates with their associate degree in business administration. So very proud of that, and with that number, only 2 of those employees are no longer with the company. So Heartland in and of itself, for what we offer in Jeffersonville, Indiana, we have a 275,000 square foot facility with perks such as an on-site daycare. That's not subsidized, but we have that, the availability to have that on our campus. We have a full-service cafeteria, a gym with, amenities and free personal trainers. But the education side of things is another perk, and it's free of charge on site. We have the college come to us. In fact, with the graduates that we've been able to graduate over the course, we have expanded that program and partnered with Indiana Tech University to offer a bachelor degree free of charge for employees that want to take advantage of that. So what I do is I manage it from A to Z. So basically, I'm running a college out of our company. So I can proctor examinations at this particular point. I take care of their tracking. I work closely with the college on books. So our students do not have to do the normal administration part of things. We take that away from them. I take that away from them. So that I go to the bookstore and I'll get the books, deliver them personally to their desk. We have classrooms at our site because part of what I do is, my day job, if you will, is the director of training and development there. So naturally fit for our Heartland University program to come up under our training and development side of things. So with all of that said, a very successful cohort model. We have a modular concept, and I know I'm all over the place. I don't have technology. Didn't know what to expect today. So we have 4 different modules to achieve your associate degree. Each module has a suite of courses, which is a set number of credit hours. Okay, you complete module 1, you move to module 2, module 3, so on. But we celebrate those victories. So if you complete module 1, your cohort completes module 1, we'll take you to lunch, you get a certificate. So we celebrate each step of the way. Each class in each module is an accelerated format. So it's 8 weeks in length. So you can get in a traditional semester, you'll get 2 classes in a traditional semester. So it's accelerated. But our students, if you have 0 college credit, one of the big questions that I get is, how long is it going to take me to get my degree? Well, if you have 0 college credits through our associate program, it would take you 4 years to get your degree. And the reason why, we accelerate it with the 8-week concept, but the reason why we do it that way is these people work full-time. They have families, they have personal lives. So if you focus 1 class at a time for 8 weeks and move through the program with your group together, we found that it's been a success. Obviously, we launched in the spring of 2011, and we've got 34 graduates as of the end of this semester. So I guess I know I've talked a lot about the program in general, so I can stop here for any questions, if that makes sense. To stop right here.
Well, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear how long you said it. You kind of broke up. How long does it take if you have no college credits?
It would take a student about 4 years to attain your degree through our program.
Would there be any way they could double up if they wanted to?
The reason why we have it in that format is because of the reasons that, the full, they work full time, they have, they're taking evening classes or weekends. So our cohorts go at different time frames. The doubling up, it could be tough on them. We also don't, we kind of shy away from online classes because we found that the face-to-face model has been more successful in the face-to-face education with our students. So yeah, have we doubled up if they get toward the end? It depends on their progression point. If I've got a student that is close to graduating, once their transcripts are evaluated and so on, then we'll look at that as an opportunity to maybe let them finish out if they're so far ahead of the different groups that we have going. So,
Do you have any students that test out of courses, or do you give any credit at all for work experience or life experience that can attribute towards their degree?
absolutely. So the CLEP testing and so on that is offered, working with the colleges that we have, I think we've had one student do it, just because it's going to be tough to test completely out of a class, and even Ivy Tech would kind of not encourage that. However, the life experience, the work experience, we have had students that, with what they do at our company or in the past, have worked with a college and gotten credit for that. Yes, so great question.
We're going to probably come to, conclude this pretty soon, but, it seems to me that this has been a discussion about things that we don't normally talk about because you don't have metrics to measure some of these things. And we're talking about behaviors and how we address obstacles and how we provide multiple pathways to these adults. And so I guess anybody else who has a question, but I guess as we conclude, for any of you who are participating as panelists today, give us something that you think would be helpful for us to know as we're trying to take these adults who, for the most part, the ones that we're talking about, have some college but no degree. What do you think that we should be encouraging our partners at colleges and universities to do? Do you think this is a financial issue? Brandon mentioned the fact that it's financial, but it's much more nuanced than just financial. You mentioned, Bob, the fact that every story is an individual story. So obviously, we're talking at a state level of what we can do. Any suggestions to us from things that you have learned over the years?
All right, well, okay, thank you. Of course, I spent 35 years in higher education, and so I've been engaged in education from a lot of different angles now, I think that for our adults, we need to simplify the message and simplify the pathways. And to do that, I have sort of three things that I think we need to be focusing on. One is reverse transfer. Having consistent reverse transfer policies statewide, I think, is a tremendous asset for our adult students. Another would be competency-based education, CBE. Now, that's a lot to ask. It's a disruptive change. But ultimately, I think that in terms of making education more accessible to adults, it's our future. And third, I would say career pathways. We need to really focus on creating very clear pathways so that we can say to our adults, this is the path you take, this is how long it'll take, and this is how much it'll cost.
So basically, you're saying predictability for adults.
Predictability and simplify.
What's constant-based education?
I'm sorry, competency-based. That's my southern accent there for you, but competency-based, yeah. Okay. So otherwise, you...
Got it.
Okay, great.
Not from up north.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
And for me, from an employment perspective or employer perspective, simplify. If a company is willing to invest in their employees, and ours is unique because it's fully funded, and I know that there's not a lot of companies out there that can fund it 100% like we do, but there are grants out there. We also have a CEF grant that we with our building expansion and so on, we were able to apply for a CEF grant in which we get 50 cents on the dollar back from the state of Indiana, which is nice. So you have to have a site coordinator. Employers, if you're going to do this and make it successful, you have to have somebody in charge of the program and seeing them through to success. Celebrating the victories, break your program up into a modular concept. Because if you celebrate those, with no college credit, with it taking 4 years to achieve a 2-year degree, you know, it's a lengthy process for them. However, 8 weeks does seem to go fast, but you have to have a site coordinator in charge of tracking and working with the students to make it easy on them. That's what we took out of the equation. We took all of the normal working with a college and administrative related stuff out of the equation, and all they do is come in and perform in the classroom. You know, we have guidelines. You know, you're going to have guidelines, you know, a C or better in every class. That's what we require. You know, there's a drop period. You know, we have what we call a 3-strike rule. You know, the first one's a freebie. You know, we'll pay for it. But if you get strike 2 in the program down the road, you know, we ask for reimbursement of a course and we can put them on plans and so on. Strike 3, you'd be out of the program, and, you know, and could petition down the road, but you'd have to reimburse for that class as well. So, you know, we think that's a fair model. And it's successful. We consistently have around 70 employees on average enrolled constantly. Some due to life, you know, situations that may happen, I know it's been part of the discussion today, end up, you know, withdrawing. But we're able to, you know, our program's attractive, so new people come in, new hires, and so on that want to join the program. So it simplified the process for me. Yes. Yes, we do. In fact, our turnover is less than 10% at our company. So, great company to work for, and like I said, happy to share our story today. But from my perspective, on you know, simplify it for the student or for the employee. You know, offer different schedule types, weekends. We do Saturday cohorts, and we have, you know, evening cohorts as well. The only days we don't do college are Friday nights and Sundays. So,
Chris, how big did you say the company was?
The company of itself is now over 8,000 employees. We were acquired, but we were around 4,500 employees when we were Heartland.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's all based.
Now the facility in Jeffersonville is 850 employees. So if our number's around 70, we're getting close to that 10% mark on average.
So that program only applies to the Jeffersonville.
Yes, and from an Indiana perspective, we have a Brook Park, Ohio office that we partnered with Lorain County Community College in the Cleveland area, and we have the same program running. It's a smaller office, but we have the same program running in that office.
Great stuff.
Chris, just one question. Do you have to, is there an application or qualification process in order to get into the program?
There's not. In fact, there's no clause at the end of the degree either that we require the employee to stay with the company for an X amount of time. That wasn't the mission of what our CEO wanted to do. It was to nourish them with education and provide an opportunity to earn a degree. And that wasn't it. Now, what we did was we took, you know, the curriculum and was able to customize it to our needs and earn that business administration degree. But yeah, there's no guideline or stipulation that we put on enrolling or after the fact.
I think that's an important point, especially for employers, because the old model of trying to help employees continue their education through tuition reimbursement programs and that sort of thing, you typically had that clawback period where they had to stay for a period of time or else you have to pay it back. And I think what folks are realizing today is that not only is this a great thing to do, but it builds so much loyalty to the company for the willingness and the perspective that the company's putting into this to really help those employees be better and reach their potential. I think is not lost on these folks.
Absolutely.
Brandon, do you have any final comments or words of instruction for us as we go forward in Indiana?
Well, I would echo several things that were just said, but we'll simply summarize by saying the simplified pathway insight is just critical. And because one of the things we know is that a lot of people who have some college, no degree, a lot of them actually had enough credits to graduate, but they didn't have the right credits. So in other words, they ended up taking a lot of classes that didn't count fully towards some of the core requirements they had. So they spent a lot of money and a lot of time in school, but never got the right credit combination that added up to a degree. So one of the things I've seen in some of the most successful adult education programs, and let's just say recovery graduates, those who dropped out and came back and graduated, is that they made a very clear pathway known to them in the advising process. It was almost so anyway, echoing that. And my only other, kind of unique ideas and suggestions would be, linked to, we are what we measure. I find it interesting that right now in this country we measure 4-year and 6-year graduation rates, but we've never tried to measure 3-year graduation rates. And I know not all programs are 3 years for a bachelor's degree, but here's a simple point. We've seen examples of institutions like Purdue and many others trying to implement 3-year programs because guess what? They're more efficient from a time and cost opportunity perspective. And what if we actually started tracking 3-year graduation rates for bachelor degree institutions? What if we actually started measuring, meaning, of the 3,000 graduates that graduated this year, how many of them are students who came back to college? I mean, that's knowable and that's trackable, but we're not tracking that. And if we start tracking that, it sends a signal about what we value. And in theory, we could also start to put incentives around that, like we do for graduation rates and all kinds of other stuff. So that would be some unique thinking from a measurement perspective.
I think that's really important. If you don't have the data, it's hard to drive policy changes or incentives. So thank you. Thank you to all three of you. Are there any other questions? If not, we're probably going to move on to our business parts. And thank you, Brandon, for joining us. And thanks to both Robert and to Chris as well.
Take care. Yep. Have a great day.
Yes, let me reiterate my thanks to all of you for your great input and great work. As Teresa said, we're going to move on to the business items of the meeting. The first agenda item for this month is the 2017-2019 budget recommendations. As everybody, I think, on the commission knows, we've had the opportunity to hear from the college and university presidents, followed by a number of meetings and culminating in the September 30th Budget and Productivity Committee meeting where we discussed the recommendations for the budget proposal. For the benefit of those in the audience and anybody else who has not heard the high points of this, I'm going to ask Chris Lamothe, as the chair of the Budget and Productivity Committee, along with Matt and Dom, in whatever way, shape, and form you'd like to bring this information to light. If you guys could please explain the highlights of the recommendation, that would be great.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I would like to just first lay out that the team at the Commission for Higher Education spent an enormous amount of time in developing this budget. We had 3 kind of formal budget meetings. All those meetings were open to all commission members. We walked through both operating and capital in developing the budget. I can tell you the staff ran through any number of iterations and different scenarios as we took a look at different options and things like that, and we're prepared to bring forward a budget recommendation. And with that, I will call on, is it Dom or Matt? Matt.
I actually don't have anything to present other than what we handed out this morning.
Okay, well, we went through the budget at the previous, our meeting this morning in detail, and we would seek approval from the commission based on the presentation earlier today.
Yes, excellent. We've had this, yes, we've seen it multiple times, so we appreciate all the hard work on behalf of the committee, Dom, Matt, and the entire staff on this good work. So you all have, from your handouts this morning, elements of that recommendation. We don't have them on the screen, but that's okay unless anybody's desperately in need of seeing them again. So without further ado, then, I guess I would ask for and entertain a motion for approval of the budget recommendation for 2017 through 19.
So moved.
Great, thank you.
Second.
We have the kids in the background.
I'm guessing who might be talking in the background there, but we have some young voices carrying through fairly loudly onto the meeting.
I unmuted to vote.
That's okay. I knew that was the case, but the cuteness is too distracting for us. I'm losing my train of thought.
Sorry, taking it back a little bit.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just maybe a point of order. Do we need do we need approval for the budget, the operating budget, and the second one for the capital budget, or are we doing these both together?
We've done it, typically, we've done it together, I
Okay.
believe, right?
All
Yeah,
right.
correct. So we have a motion for approval and a second. Are there any additional comments, questions for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, please. All right, we have approval of the 2017-19 budget recommendation. Thank you all very much. Let's see, we have 3 academic degree programs on our agenda for expedited actions. They're listed in your agenda book, starting on page 19. I would entertain a motion for approval. John, thank you. And a second. Any comments, questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, those are approved. Let's see, we have 4 capital projects up for full discussion today. First item on the agenda is the auxiliary library facility in Indiana University. I'd like to invite Dr. Morrison, Dr. Tom Morrison, Vice President for Capital Planning and Facilities from Indiana University, to discuss this item, which it begins on page 23 of your agenda book.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Always my pleasure to be with you. I have 3 projects for you today. I know they're up for full discussion, but I will try not to be full form. The first one for you is the auxiliary library facility on our Bloomington campus. This is what we call ALF 3, auxiliary library facility 3. It is a facility that we utilize for the storage of university assets, mostly books. But this one will be built, the first 2 were mostly for books. This one will be built for artwork and university collections. Sometimes people like to think these are just glamorous warehouses, but they're not. They are very involved facilities that take the form of a warehouse, but are designed to withstand high wind, weather, and be climate controlled so that we can forever preserve these assets, like you say, that are rare art collections and rare books. We've had great success with emptying our university library so that we can use those for learning spaces, and this is where we put all the materials. So this is a 32,000 square foot facility cost $13 million and will be funded from university sources. Happy to answer any questions there, and turn to Dom as well.
Yeah, I think Dominic Chase is going to provide staff recommendations and then entertain any questions for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Dr. Morrison graciously took Matt and I on a tour of this facility and the other 2 I referred to last fall, so we really appreciated the opportunity to see those firsthand. And these projects were all reviewed at the October Budget Productivity Committee meeting.
And here.
Is the mic on?
This one has a, can you hear me?
It is a little quiet, yeah.
This one has a higher cost per square foot, which can be attributed to the precise humidity and temperature controls for the nature of the facility. And after our internal review, we recommend approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, comments for either Dr. Morrison or Tom?
What is the, when you say campus funds, where do the campus funds come from?
Campus funds are all general funds of the university that could take the form of, in this case, interest income, auxiliary sales and services, can be in the form of tuition revenue as well, but it's our general fund of the university. It is not state funds.
Other questions? Oh, sorry.
Some of it is tuition, though, correct?
It could be. We don't color the money that way, but all general funds were calculated in that form.
Comments, questions? Okay, I'd entertain approval of the Auxiliary Library Facility 3. Very good. Thank you, Chris. Second. Very good. Any further comments? All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Very good. Approved. Since you're still up there, the next up is the Eskenazi Museum of Art renovations at Indiana University, beginning on page 33 of your agenda. Dr. Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second project for your review today is the renovation of the Sidney and Lois Eskenazi Museum of Art on the Bloomington campus. This is our principal museum of art for Indiana University with a collection that is extensive and rare. It is in a facility designed by international renowned architect I.M. Pei. Building built in the early 1980s. It is now at its point of needing its full renovation. This renovation will be not only renovation to all heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in the museum, but also to all of the galleries. It is going to be a $30 million renovation, 120,000 square feet. And as has been noted during your committee meeting, it is a higher cost per square foot to renovate, but believe me, the cost of building a new museum for a rare collection, that is far in excess of what we would pay to build a laboratory building. And so for $250 a square foot, we are pleased that we're getting a great bang for our buck, and it is being funded by a combination of philanthropy and university funds.
All right, Dom, you want to go ahead and give the staff recommendations, then we'll do questions.
Dr. Morrison covered mostly what we investigated. I just wanted to add the museum entertained some 72,000 visitors in 2015, and I'd be interested to see the number after a much-needed makeover, and we do recommend your approval.
Very good. Yeah. Karen?
I just have a question. While you're renovating, what will you do with all the precious objects that are currently housed in the building?
Thank you, Commissioner Whitehouse. That is a great question. It's one of the expenses of the construction effort is that we are starting to enact a plan to move all of the art, and that is not as simple as some of our students would do, just putting it in the backseat of the car and moving it around. And so it has to be carefully packaged and encased, and that some of it will be moved to other museums in the country so that it can still be seen. Some of it will be moved to other locations at the university, and the rest will be moved to actually our data center. The most secure facility we have in the Indiana University system is our technology data center in Bloomington, which is mostly below ground, bunker-like facility, and it is climate controlled as well. And so we'll be moving it into a spare bay in that facility, which is actually adjacent to the auxiliary library facility. And it was because of this renovation that we realized that we did not have the capability in the auxiliary library to handle art. And so that's one of the reasons we're building the other facility as well. So it is a very big effort, and it's a very expensive effort.
Yeah, just cataloging that so that you know where everything went when it left. I'm very impressed, but that's part of this expense. So
Yes,
that's
exactly.
good to know. Thank you.
Judd?
Hey, Tom, the one we just approved was a new construction at $406, whereas you mentioned that this type of museum is closer to $1,000 a square foot. Why wouldn't the humidity and climate control and so forth be similar in both of these structures?
They would be. In fact, they're exactly the same. The difference is in the design. The auxiliary library facility is more of a warehouse building, whereas the museum itself has galleries, and so that's the difference.
It's the architectural aspect of it.
That is correct. And the museum accepts, as Dominic mentioned, accepts visitors, and so it's a gallery facility as opposed to the storage facility, which is different.
Gotta be fancier and look prettier, right?
That is correct, yes.
Judd?
Okay.
Do you have any idea on the split of the campus renovation funds
Yes.
versus gifts?
Yes, 50-50. So, and actually, we anticipate as any philanthropic campaign goes on, at the moment, we are 50-50, but we continue to raise funds. So every bit of money that we raise in philanthropy decreases the amount of university funds we're utilizing for that. So, but right now, it's a $15 million split.
Okay.
Is that going to have Bobby Knight's chair in there?
Different museum, I think.
Different museum facility, and my official answer is we don't know where that chair is.
Donald Trump has it. Tom, how long's the museum, I'm sure I read this somewhere, how long's it be closed during this renovation?
It is our goal to close it next summer and be reopened in the spring of 2019. So we closed.
Okay.
It would be closed for about a year and a half. And to Commissioner Whitehouse's question, we know that we can complete the construction of the renovation in 12 to 14 months. The moving back of the art is going to take several months.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And thankfully, I won't be doing it.
All right, any further questions? If not, I will entertain a motion for approval of the Eskenazi Museum of Art renovations. Okay, thank you. I've got a motion and a second. Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. You have approval. Very good, thank you. And let's see, next up, Dr. Morrison. I believe you're back up on the dais. We have the Forest Quadrangle Residence Hall renovation. This begins on page 43 of your agenda. So take it away, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My last one for you here in Evansville today is renovation of Forest Quadrangle also on Bloomington campus. This is part of our long-term renovation of all of our residence hall facilities. Forest is one of the old high-rise versions, and it is up for its full renovation. $15 million to be funded completely by residence hall fees. It is part of our long-term renewal plan, not unlike some of the other ones we've had before you in the last several years. New heating and ventilation systems, new bathrooms, new plumbing, new electrical, fire alarms, elevator repair, all of the standard residence hall repairs.
Very good. Tom, you want to give us the staff recommendation?
For residence halls, we typically look at student safety when we're reviewing, and this project does address a number of those concerns, including sprinklers, security, and access, etc. It is the final large residence hall in need of renovation at IU Bloomington's campus. They've all been renovated in recent years, and it is in line with comparable projects, the costs. We do recommend approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Comments, questions for Dr. Morrison or Tom? Okay.
I like the square footage charge better than the...
Excellent. Hearing no other questions, I will entertain a motion for approval of the Forest Quadrangle Residence Hall renovation.
So moved.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. Have approval.
That was a nice for me. I was on mute.
You voted yes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes for me. I just was on mute. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay, last item for the capital projects is the Hall for Discovery and Learning Research at Purdue University. I think Tony is here. Okay, I hadn't seen him yet. Tony Hahn, Director of State Relations and Policy Analysis for Purdue, is here to discuss the item, which begins on page 53 of your agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Only one project from Purdue today. As mentioned, a renovation to the 3rd and 4th floor of our Hall for Discovery and Learning Research. This is a full renovation of both the 3rd and 4th floor, and it will include mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural upgrades to support new wet lab, new dry lab, computational support area, collaborative and administrative space for the growing Purdue Institute for Integrative Neuroscience and the Purdue Institute for Inflammation, Immunology, and Infectious Disease. That is a multi-interdisciplinary center that encompasses 8 colleges and 27 departments and over 100 faculty from different areas. The project, the full renovation is estimated at about $12 million and will be funded from institutional reserves. And in anticipation of that question, institutional reserves in this case are funded from what we call F&A, which is facilities and administrative or cost recovery from grants, interest income, and other sources that are not public or state funds.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Dom, you want to give staff recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For this project, we looked at the National Science Foundation's numbers for funding for research and development at institutions of higher education, which has declined 11% since 2011, leaving institutions to find ways of funding projects such as this. After our review, we recommend approval.
Okay, very good. Once again, these have all been reviewed and approved, or reviewed and approved at the Budget and Productivity Committee meeting. Any questions for Tony or Dom? Okay. Hearing none, I would entertain approval for the Hall for Discovery and Learning Research renovation project.
Second.
Great. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Very good. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along, we have, we have one capital project for expedited action. It is the University of Southern Indiana Health Professions Center renovation. It's listed in your book on page 63. I would entertain a motion and a second, if I may.
So moved.
Thank you very much.
So moved.
Any comments or questions?
Wherever I am.
All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, excellent. So you can find information items. Wrapping up, you can find information items on beginning on page 67 of your agenda book. Is there any old business that have yet to be brought up? Any new business? Once again, reminder for the December 1st and 2nd student conference. Micah, thank you for your involvement with that, I believe, and look forward to that event. Representing all the students of this state of Indiana. That's wonderful. So hearing none, I will call this meeting to adjournment, and we'll see everybody at our next meeting on December 8th in Indianapolis. Thanks very much. Have a great day.